All right. Like Jenna mentioned, today we're going to be talking about component-based design, designing for design systems, right? So the web is evolved to a place where it's not, the websites we build are actually built on a foundation of elements that combine together to create something better than the sum of their parts. So let's take a look at, these slides here. Real quick, the agenda for today, we're going to start by building a button. Real simple, but I want to get some foundational stuff in there first. We're going to make that button component more flexible, and then we're going to look at building an advanced card component. And throughout this, I'll be going over a number of different features in Figma to kind of help onboard people to how I work in that. Like I mentioned, we're using Figma, so you can check out figma.com if you don't already have an account. You can create an account for free, and there are different levels of plans that you can get for more features, more collaboration features, things like that. But highly recommend going to Figma and playing around with it. We often have clients who will create their own Figma account, and just as a way to share ideas and start thinking about their own websites. And it's a great way to kind of facilitate communication when we can all kind of think visually as well as verbally. So like I mentioned, we're going to be talking about components, and I would be remiss not to mention Atomic Design by Brad Frost. A lot of what the web is based on now is based on some of these concepts, that atomic design. So starting with those atoms and building up to larger and larger elements or modules, things like that, up to pages, but combining those elements together to create this design system that's flexible. Specifically, we're thinking about CMSs. So we design a lot of websites for Drupal and WordPress, and that means that the designs we create need to be flexible. A CMS is a living, breathing thing. It needs to evolve over time with the website that it's supporting, and so our design system has to also work with that. So we're often working really closely with developers to make sure that what we're designing matches how they're going to build it. And it's really important to have that kind of communication as you're thinking about design. All right, so before we get too far, if you're new to Figma, even if you're not new to Figma, I wanted to cover a few features. First, this little icon here, and you'll see it down in this bottom corner. This is the help and resources icon. So if you're ever trying to figure out how to do something in Figma, this is the place to go. And I'm going to click that, and you'll see a little menu that pops up. And the thing I want to focus on first is this keyboard shortcuts link. So if I open that up, you'll now see this persistent bar across the bottom of the screen. The great thing about this is that it will walk you through all of the different shortcuts for anything you need to do in Figma. There are shortcuts for just about everything. And the really cool feature of this is that as you use the shortcuts, they'll actually turn blue like you see here. I'm a bit of a completionist, so I like to, when I play video games, I like to find every secret chest or whatever, So in this case, I like to try all of the shortcuts and make sure that I understand, how Figma works with these shortcuts. So as you use them, they'll start to light up blue like this. I think they're kind of white by default, but all the shortcuts are grouped by different categories. And as I was preparing for this talk today, I actually realized there were a few that I hadn't used yet. And it was kind of cool to see, like, oh, how could I do that? Oh, great. And now I know a new thing I can, pull out of my toolbox as I'm working in Figma. All right, so highly recommend that. And then Figma Help. So Figma has fantastic, extensive documentation. If you go to the help site, it's grouped by category. You can search. And the thing that I love is that I'll often be looking at a help article trying to learn maybe a new feature or something I've used before. And there's always something that I didn't know, and I'll pick up some new skill or new approach that those help articles touch on. They also include things like videos and files you can work in and see how those features should be used. So it's a really great place to get an understanding of the tool and to kind of make sure that you're covering all your bases. All right. So before we get too far, what even is a component? Well, a component is an element you can reuse across your designs. So, like I mentioned, we're designing for design systems. So those components are going to be really important. You might have a button in one place that's used in 100 different places. If you wanted to change the color of that button, you don't want to change it 100 different times. You want to change it once. So doing that through a component means you can change it in one place, and that'll ripple out through the rest of your design and make those updates. So really, really great to build in flexibility and consistency. So components are really powerful. In Figma, there are a couple different icons you'll see associated with components. The one on the left here, you'll see this is the main component icon. And what that means is that is the kind of source of truth. So that's the thing that you want to change if you want to change everything else. This icon on the right is for an instance of a component. So, if I have a button that's a main component and then I make another version of it and I change the text on that one instance, that isn't going to change the text everywhere. So that's where you get really powerful tools at your fingertips to make these really flexible designs that actually look like a real website. So really, really great to have an understanding of these features. I wanted to walk you through a few examples. So this is an example accordion component. So you'll see here it's got this dashed border around it. And what that means is, this is a component, and it's a component that has variants. So in this case, we've got a closed version and an open version. Like you would see on a website, you have an accordion that you might want to expand or collapse to see more content. So this is the main component version of the accordion. In here, you can see on the right, there are a few different options for it. It has open, false, or true. So that's kind of a toggle, and I'll get into that in a little bit. It has a title and it has a body. So let's look at an instance of that component. All right, so now this is an instance, and you can see on the right, again, all of those properties are still there, but they're different. Now you can interact with them. So you can see, look at this, if I click on open and turn that off, it's no longer open. Turn it back on, there it is. I can also change the title. So test, look at that, it's updated instantly in this version. And if I go back to this, it's not updated here. So, like I said, really powerful. And when you start thinking about instances in a design, often you'll be combining instances. So here you can see, I've got a number of different accordions, and I'm just going to do a quick play of this. And I can click and, expand all of these. Figma does this cool thing where when you click anywhere, it'll highlight in blue those things that are interactive. So that can help when you're, looking at a design, trying to figure out, what actually can I play around with here? It's not the real website. Not everything is going to be interactive, but some things are. So this is a great example of that. All right. And then here's another example of a component. In this case, it has a hover state, so false or true. So that's another toggle, and a title. So this link title down here. And you can see it has an image, and this image is assigned on the right here. You can see there's this fill option. I can change, different settings on my image. I don't want to mess around with that right now. But on this base component, I'm all set up to start building instances of it. So let's look at an instance. So now I've got a version of it. And now, instead of saying link title, it says vacation getaways. And if I do a quick preview, quick preview of this, and I hover, you can see that those prototyping features that Figma provides let you actually make animations and things like hover effects and transitions, things like that are going to really help to kind of sell that design and make it feel real before it needs to be built in the browser. And then, like before, if we start looking at multiple components, here are three that are kind of grouped together. This is starting to feel like, oh, this might be an element or an area of a web page that is featuring different kind of call outs to different content, things like that. So so these are some examples. One really cool thing, let's say I wanted to change this image, and well, let's see, I'm gonna back up a little bit. I want to change this image. One of my favorite keyboard shortcuts is Command / on a Mac. And that will open up this kind of, quick search interface. And in this, I want to use the Unsplash plugin. Figma has a huge plugin community. So there are a ton of different plugins. Some of them are really complex, like this Unsplash one. I'm going to show that one to you right now. But I want to find a different image. And in this case, I open up this and I search for, oops, airplane. And let's try this one. Let's see what this looks like. All right, that's kind of weird. Not really a fan of that. How about this one that's kind of the wing? And you can see that I'm really quickly trying out different images. I'm able to, explore what they look like in the design using this plugin. Really, really fantastic tool for, making designs that are, that feel alive, like I said. All right, and then if I do a play, you can see that that image is updated in the prototype. All right, so that's kind of a high level look at some examples of components. Let's start building one. Before we get too far, we're actually going to build a button. So you can see this is a pretty simple button element, and if I open this up, it has a hover state. When I hover, that arrow moves. Pretty straightforward. All right, let's take a look at how this is built. So first I'm going to show you what's powering this demo version of the button, and then we're going to actually build it ourselves. So this is a really simple one. I wanted to keep things simple for today. But you can see this is a component. It's got that dashed line around it. And then within it, there are two different variants. This is the normal state and the hover state. It has a title or a label, and it has an icon. And when I have that component selected, you can see that the hover state is set to false or true. That's what makes the distinction between these two different versions or variants, and the label. So if I were to make a version of this button, drag it out here, I can turn on hover to see what that looks like. And then I can change the label to, let's see, subscribe. All right, pretty straightforward, right? All right, now let's see here. What if we were building this component? Why don't we try that? All right, so first thing I'm going to do with this component is create some text. You can hit the T key to create text and click anywhere. And I'm going to say continue as my text for my button. Figma has this really great integration with Google Fonts, but it has lots of filtering too. So you can actually filter by fonts in this file. Fonts used at Aten. So, within my organization, I can browse the fonts that are used in our files. Popular fonts, Google Fonts, variable fonts, fonts installed by me. So like fonts that I have on my computer. And what I'm gonna do today is just type in inter. I'm gonna show you what this looks like with that inter typeface. That updates there, and then maybe we'll do a bold version of that. Okay, so I've got the text, and now I want to make sort of the shape around the text. And for that, I'm going to draw a frame. So I'm going to hit F with this text selected and draw a frame around it. Now you can see over on the left here, I've got this frame, and then the continue text is inside that frame. All right, getting there. Over on the right here, we've got a number of different properties for this frame that we can customize. This one here is the border or the corner radius, border radius when it's on the web. And I could set it to 10, and that kind of rounds it a little bit. You know what? I'm going to actually change this to that purple color so we can really see it. Okay, so you can set it to 10. Or in this case, I want it to be more kind of a pill shape. So I'm going to set it to 60. Why not? We'll just see what that looks like. Okay, so now I've got this button roughly where I want it. So what I'm going to do is name it button, and then I'm going to make it into a component. So you can right click and choose create component, or you can see here, like I mentioned, these keyboard shortcuts are really powerful. They're throughout the interface. So anytime you're looking at doing something, you can do it through keyboard shortcuts a lot of the time, and it'll help you figure out what that shortcut is. So I'm going to choose create component. Okay, so now you can see, like I mentioned earlier, that icon is there for that component. This is the main component for a button. Okay. And then let's see, I want to make an instance of it. So now I've got an instance of this button, but I don't have any properties. So we need to set that stuff up. So I'm going to just leave this instance here so we can start to see it get updated. So I'm going to go back to my main component button. And I'm going to hold down Command and click on the text. Command is what you can use to direct select something within Figma. That makes it really easy to change things directly. And in this case, I've got this text selected. All of the options I think are pretty good here. I'm going to leave those where they are, but I want to look for this icon here. And you can see when I hover, it says create text property. So let's do that. We're going to do that. We're going to click on that, and I'm going to call this label and choose create property. Okay, so now when I select my main component, you can see in the properties panel here, I have a text property for the label. And if I go back down here to this, look at that, it's updated. So let's try updating it and see what happens. Subscribe today. Oh boy, okay. So we got some more work to do. All right, first of all, the problem here is that this is just a frame. The frame is kind of a dumb container. It doesn't know anything about what's inside it. It just knows I am this size. We're going to change that, and we're going to use a feature that's incredibly powerful, and it's called auto layout. So auto layout is what I use throughout almost all of my designs to lay anything out, because it just makes it a breeze to keep things flexible. So I'm going to go over here and hit plus on this button, and you can see as soon as I did that, this updated. So let's walk through what auto layout's doing. Well, first you have a few different options for the direction. So in this case, it's going off to the right, and that'll matter when we add an icon in just a little bit. You can make it go down, or you can make it wrap. The wrapping auto layout is useful. Like, let's say you have a list of recent news stories that you're showing in a grid. You can use that wrapping feature and show them in different rows, and it makes it really simple to change the layout of those elements within that that auto layout. So then you also have the space. So this is the gap between the items. So in this case, I have text right now. You know what? Let's add an icon. I'm going to fire up that quick search, and I'm going to use Iconify. This is another plugin that I like to use. Iconify is a really great tool for finding icons, because it has all of these different icon libraries kind of baked into it. And I'm going to search for arrow. Ooh, okay, so you can see it pulled up a lot of results, and then if I go to the next page, next page, next page, okay, there's a million of these. None of these are quite what I want. I want arrow right. Okay. Oh, this is better. But let's say I knew I wanted a specific library. Let's say material symbols. I can select that. And then all of a sudden, it limits the results to only things within material symbols that have arrow right in their name. So pretty simple. And I'm going to use this one here. This one looks pretty good to me. If I look at this here, there are a few different options within Iconify. I can choose the color that it's going to be dropped in as. This has all of my document colors. So these are things that I've set up ahead of time just to have a color library available. I can choose the height. I can copy the code for an icon. So if I was a developer who was going to be working in the browser, I could copy that code right out of here and have that SVG code available. I'm just going to choose import icon. Okay, and that should drop it. Oh, where did it drop it? Right here. Of course, it's a fine spot to put that. Just tucked away. All right, so we're going to drag this over to a little closer to where we're working, just to have that available. And I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this icon, and then I'm going to put a / in there. Arrow right. That / tells Figma that this is within a group. And the group in this case is icon. So you'll often want to group all of your icons in one grouping in the way you name them. Maybe you have components that you want to group in certain ways, but it's a really great way. And I'll show you in a little bit why that matters. So I've got this thing set up, and now I want to make it into a component. So I'm going to do Command Option K. Boom. Okay, so now I've got this component. I'm going to copy it, Command C, and I'll paste it in here. All right. So you can see this button's starting to take shape. It's starting to look pretty good. I'm going to make the color of this something from my color library. Awesome. All right, the subscribe button's looking good. And then now that we have that icon in there, I can show you. So this gap between items, if I make this 30, you can see that that space in between is much bigger. You can also drag it yourself. You can hold down Shift and it'll do it in 10 pixel increments. So this is a really quick and easy way to make updates to the layout as you're looking at the design. So I'm going to set that to, we'll say 16. And then here, this is the padding. So we've got padding in the horizontal direction, so the left and right, and on the top and bottom. And for me, for this button, I want the padding on the left and right to be a little wider. So I'm going to set that to 32. And I'm going to set the top and bottom to 16. I typically design within 4 pixel increments. It just makes things more consistent, and it also works really well across different screen sizes and screen densities, pixel densities. So if you have like a really high res screen, you can think about it that way. But here we go. Okay, so we've got our button, we've got our icon, and we're looking pretty good, right? So now if I go back here and I change this to, let's say, we'll just say submit. Oops, I got a little extra character in there. Yeah, all right, awesome. And you can see the power of this. So now I've got this submit button. I can make another version that says read more. Shouldn't say read more. Read more is terrible for accessibility, but you get the idea. So now all of these are updated. And if I make a change to this base or this main component, you can see it instantly updates across all of these different instances. All right, so this is actually getting pretty close to what we had over here, but there's another step. I want to make it so that it has a hover state. So what I want to do for that is select that main component again, go back over to this properties panel, hit this plus icon and add a variant. All right, so as soon as I did that, it added this dashed border around my component, and it added a new property. In this case, it's calling it property 1. So I'm going to name this hover, and I'm going to select this variant within the main component. I'm going to set this to false. And then I want to add another variant. So what I can do is just hold down Option and drag. I can hold down Shift and it'll lock it in that kind of horizontal direction. And now I have another version. You can see it tries to fill in what you might want to call this. This I'm going to say hover is true. So now we've got 2 different versions of this component within here, or 2 different variants. And for the hover state, I want to do a few things. I want to make the background, let's go real dark. How about that? All right, so now we've got this dark background. And then I'm going to make the arrow kind of move off to the right a little bit on hover. And to do that, I have to do a couple different things. So I'm going to add 4 pixels to the gap between. So just a subtle animation here. And then I have to take 4 off of the right side, or else that side will shift out as the button gets hovered. And we don't want that. So now we've got this element here. Let's drag this button over here and kind of see what we're working with. Oh, Figma. What are you doing? All right, here, we'll try it this way. This is the prototype view. Okay, so I hover over this and nothing's happening. Well, the reason for that is that we haven't actually set up the prototype version, states for this button. So let's go back over to our working file here. I'm going to select that initial version, and then I'm going to go over to this right panel, and you'll notice this whole time we've been working in the design panel. Now I'm going to select the prototyping panel. So it's kind of like a tab here. And this changes everything. So now I've got some different options. We're not going to get into all of these today, but in this case, I want to look at interactions. So I can add an interaction, and that's how we add that hover state. Another option would be when I'm in this prototyping panel, if I'm hovering over this variant, I can actually just drag. So let's see, it's while hovering, change to hover is true. Boom. Okay. And then if there's enough room, it'll actually show you what that interaction is. So it makes it really easy to see. And then if I click on it, I can make changes to it. So let's go back over to this version and see what happens. Oh yeah. Okay. So that's pretty much doing what we want, but maybe we want like a little, we want to smooth out that transition so it's not so jumpy. So we're going to go over here. We'll click on this. Right now it's set to instant, and you can use smart animate and 300 milliseconds. Sure, that works. Go back here. Boom. All right. We got our button. This worked, right? So you can see that, setting these up takes a little bit of work, but it saves you a ton of work down the road. Now that you know that your button is ready to go, you don't have to, create it 100 different times or worry about updating it 100 different times if you need to change something. I can go back in here and instantly, if I select these elements and I do want to, let's say I want to set the corner radius to 6, it's instantly updated across every instance of that component. All right. So now that we've got that button kind of in good shape, let's create button 2.0. And I want to show you an example of this. So we're going to fire it up over here. So this is another version of that button. And in this case, you can see I've got one here that's on a light background, and I've got another one here that's on a dark background. And that starts to get into some really cool features of Figma that they've just started adding. But I want to show you, these are smart components. And when I say smart, I mean, they know sort of the context that they're in. The frame that this button is in has a mode, and the mode is dark mode false. Okay, let's back up a little bit. So Figma recently introduced variables into its application. They're still in beta, and they plan on extending the feature a lot, but they already have a ton of functionality that makes it really powerful for creating really flexible designs. If I have nothing selected, I can see over in this design panel, local variables is an option. And I'm gonna open the variables, and you can see I've got a number of different things kind of set up here. At the top, I've got padding. I'll get into that in a little bit. And then I've got screen size, but I actually have different collections of variables. And I've got a dark mode variable, so false and true. And that's where the power really comes in for this. So if I select this button, you can see it's got this dark option that's set to dark mode, but it's set to that dark mode variable. So if I turn that off, there's this icon here. And that's the icon that tells you you can assign a variable to this. So that'll adapt to the mode that it's in. So now this will adapt to the dark mode of its container. And this frame here that this button is within, you can see is set to dark mode false. If I change that to true, the button instantly updates. So it's smart. And then I can even drag this into another frame, and it instantly updates based on the frame it's in. That's really powerful. It doesn't just work for dark mode, it also works for screen sizes. So you can set like different screen sizes. You can do a lot of different stuff with modes, and I'll get into some of that in just a little bit. But I did want to talk about this demo advanced button. So you can see here, much like the button we had earlier, we have a default state and a hover state, but we also have a light version of the button so that when it's on a dark background, you can still see it and it looks good. So here we've got the default and the hover state when it's on that dark background. And here's just kind of a demo version of that. If I turn on dark, hover, all of this is updating. This version of the component also has some added flexibility in that it has this icon option. So I can actually turn that icon off. Maybe I don't want the icon. Maybe I just want, the button with the text. I can turn it on, and then it has another feature that lets me change that icon. So I can change it. This is where that naming convention comes in really handy. Because I named these all icon slash arrow right, icon slash arrow circle right, it knows that those are the options it should show by default. I can go out of here and browse my file. I can browse other libraries. So let's say I'm working from an existing design system that might live somewhere else. I can pull in those things into my design. But for now, I'm just kind of trying to keep things a little simple for you. All right, so like I mentioned, this mode feature is where the real power comes in. And I wanna show you how to set that up. So we're gonna build an advanced button component. So we're gonna take our button from over here, and we've got a new kind of version of it. dropped in. And let's say I want to add another variant for that dark mode button, or dark mode version. So let's go here. We're going to choose plus for variant. We're going to call it dark mode. And the default is false. Create that property. And then I'm going to select both of these, hold down Option, and just drag them down. And you can see Figma gives us a message. It says, hey, there's a problem here. These have the same settings as another variant, and that's going to cause issues. And that's because the dark mode property has not been updated. So we're actually going to change this to true. As soon as we do that, it fixes the problem. Now we know that because these are going to be on dark mode, we need to change some of these colors. So going in here, try to do this kind of quickly here. I'm going to change all the text. I'm just going to make it dark. Yeah, we'll do that. Maybe we'll make the arrow purple. It's got to be a dark purple to work on that yellow. All right, we're getting there. All right, we want to make sure that this arrow can be seen. So, choosing a color that's visible on a light background is really important. Okay, so now I've got this set up. I need to make the hover state work. Now, here's something that's really awesome with Figma. When you drag two variants that have some interactivity between each other, it copies that interactivity to the new versions. So I don't actually have to do any work to set this button component up. It's already all set to go. So I've got, I've got my component here. If I, drag a version out, I can change it to dark mode. I can make it hover. It looks like everything's working. One thing that we did talk about was this icon. So I've got this icon in here, but I want to be able to change it. So what I can do is I can go into my my component here, and if I select that icon, you'll see this target icon kind of showed up. And what that does, when you hover over it, it says select all 4 matching layers. This is really great. So I can instantly go and click on that, and all of a sudden, all these icons are selected. And what I want to do is create a component property for these icons. So what I'm going to do is click on this, which makes a nested instance property. And I'm going to call this icon. And the default value is going to be arrow right. It has a preferred values option. This is something you can set up. So maybe you're working in a really big design system and you've got maybe 500 icons. You don't want to have to search for the icons that are meant to be used on the button. Maybe there's only 5 that you want to use on buttons across your design. That's where you might set those up. But for today, I'm just going to turn that off. All right, we're going to create property. All right, now you can see I've got my button all set up, and this is not quite where it needs to be, but let's go figure that out. Okay, so we've got this version of the icon here. We need to add another icon. So let's fire up Iconify. I've still got my arrow right options here, and I'm just going to grab this one that's in a circle. All right, and I'm going to name it icon / arrow right circle. And then I'll Command Option K to turn it into a component. All right, so let's go back over here. And now if I select this option, oh no, what's going on, Figma? Sometimes Figma is a little tricky. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take these and we're going to come over here. You won't have these problems when you're working in Figma. And we're going to break those. I'm going to name this icon new arrow right, icon new arrow right circle. Make those into components. Live demos are always fun. All right, and then I'm gonna drop those in, and I'm going to delete this old version. And so now that I've got this in there, I need to actually tie it to the icon property, and that seems to be working. And then I'll do that, and then I'll just copy this new icon version across my designs, and then update these colors. Where's that purple? Okay, fingers crossed. You know what we need to do? We need to reset. We need to drag this. Let's try it now. Nope, it's still giving me issues. It could be, you know what I think it is? These are not the same size. So these need to be the same size to work. So let's do 32. This doesn't work, we'll move on. There's plenty of other stuff. All right. Anyway, that should be simple. I think I messed something up in the creation there, but now you can see, you know, I've got my button here. And then if I want to drag it over into the dark mode, it should automatically update. Okay, that's not working. And that's because we haven't set that up yet. So what we need to do, I'm going to delete this version. Now that I have this button selected, if I come over to the properties panel here, I can see this icon next to dark mode. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to assign the dark mode variable. And then for the frame, I'm going to give it a mode, and it's set to dark mode false. So dark mode false. And then if I drag this over here, this one's set to dark mode true. All right, so now our button's working. We've got this really flexible button that can work across different screen sizes. Yeah, lots of flexibility that you can build in here. How did you add variants to the hover property? Sorry, I missed that question earlier. I might have to go back a little bit, but basically, I selected this the main component. I hit plus, and I added a variant, and then I changed the values to false and true, and that automatically makes it that toggle. If that doesn't answer your question, I'm happy to kind of follow up towards the end. All right, I want to make sure we've got time for questions. I'm going to demo real quick some more advanced features. So in this case, you know, as you're designing a website, you aren't just going to be designing buttons. You're going to start to put things together, you know, start building those kind of molecules and, you know, thinking about, you know, how you can support that design system. So here I've made a card component, and it has a few settings. It has dark mode and screen size. And what that means is you can see for this version, things are kind of large. There's larger padding. I'm not going to worry about the padding. I'll show you that in just a second. This version, the text is a little smaller, and here the text is even smaller still. And then we've got dark mode versions of all of those. And then to see what that looks like, you can see it over here. I've got this card in this context. And then if I drag it over here, automatically updated. Now, something weird happened. Why did the layout change there? Well, that's because of the modes that are set up on each of these different frames. So on this light frame, let me get this title thing out of there. On this light frame, I have it set to mobile. So the card's the mobile version of the card. For this other frame, I have it set to desktop. Now, let me just show you real quick. As I'm changing the modes for this frame, that component is updating to that version. And that's because I've tied these properties to that variable, that screen size variable. So you're kind of connecting a thread throughout your design. When this is really powerful is, let's say you've designed a desktop version of a page, and now you need to make a tablet version and then a mobile version, and all your components are set up to have those. I have literally dragged all of the components from a desktop version into a tablet version and had to just move things around a little bit to make them work. But for the most part, the design was updated because I thought through my components and I built them in a flexible way. And that's where the real power can come in. I'm not going to get into building a card component just yet. One thing I did want to touch on before we wrap up is, you know, how does this work for developers? So we're talking about design systems, right? We want to make sure that we're designing something that can actually be built, that a developer can look at and say, okay, I get it. I know how this works. I know how to get into this and start to dig into things. Well, another new feature that Figma just launched is called developer mode. And I'm going to show that to you real quick, and I'll go back to that card component to walk you through that. So to fire up developer mode, there's a little toggle up here in the top right, or you can hit Shift D. Let's do the keyboard shortcut. Those are always fun. So I hit Shift D. Doesn't look like much has changed, but you'll notice as I'm moving around my design, I can start to see sort of a different interface for how I can interact with things. And when I select that card, all of a sudden I can see a whole bunch of information. So this is where it's really great for developers. So if I look over here, I can see all of the padding, I can see the width, I can see, even the space around the card. Maybe that's important. In this case, it's not, but maybe in a design, there's space between elements that's really important. It also will show you CSS code to actually make this thing. So you can choose to copy and paste this code right out of here and make it work. It's also going to show you, like, in this case, the background is using a variable color. So it's using that gray 90 variable. And it also gives you the hex code for it. So you can get all of that information that you need as a developer. And that's not all. So another really powerful feature is this playground option. So I'm going to open in playground. And now I've got this card kind of sitting here. And I can play with it. I can choose to see it in dark mode, light mode. I can change it to medium. I can change it to small. I can change, the different sort of variable modes on the container for the playground. And so this is a really great way to kind of see, what's going to happen to this thing across, different screen sizes and what it should look like. So if the component is built with that kind of flexibility in mind, it makes it a lot easier. So if you're a developer and you're not really familiar with Figma and you want to kind of figure out how you could use it and maybe work with a designer, getting into dev mode and starting to play around with it, you can see as I'm going, I'm selecting different things, and I can copy the text out of here. It gives you all that content if I need to copy that and use it in my HTML. All of the different properties. It's giving me up here, it's giving me like the line height and the pixel value for that. There are layout things for like Flexbox. Again, really powerful, really exciting features. And this is the thing that makes it so that when a developer comes in and looks at a Figma file, they can get to what they need to make their job easier and really start to build out this component-based system from the Figma file.